Hey guys, in this video I'm going to give you 3 tips on how to get started with coding and what you need to do along that coding journey to be successful at the end. Now this is specifically aimed at teenagers for 2 reasons, because I'm a teenager and I know how to code. So the logic follows. So number 1, we're going to have to start with why you want to code. Knowing why you want to code is actually more important than you may think. A lot of teenagers when they're 14, 15, 16 think, oh wow, Mark Zuckerberg made Facebook and he ended up a billionaire. He made Instagram, they made Snapchat, they made PayPal, whatever, and they go into coding for that reason, to try and make the next big thing. Now, there's no problem with going into coding and learning to code to try and make a solution at the end, to try and make an application, a product, or anything like that at the end. But if you go into programming thinking that at the end you're going to end up with some crazy wealth and be a billionaire and create the next big thing, you shouldn't really try and do that as your objective. There's a reason these businesses are called unicorns, because they're just super rare. And if you go into coding for that reason, you're just going to get let down. That's not the reason that you should go into coding, and it's going to be frustrating trying to code, trying to learn the complex parts of coding, the not so glamorous side of coding, when you don't really want to code for the sake of learning to code. One thing people often leave out is how unglamorous programming is. Obviously you get to see the flashy stuff at the end, like apps like Instagram, Snapchat, anything really, web applications, etc, but you don't see the difficult stuff that goes into learning how to do that, such as learning how to debug, learning about databases, potentially file management, all the boring stuff that's associated with it. So you should keep that in mind. Number 2, this is going to be how you're going to start coding. Now there are a few different ways to get started coding, and it's actually probably the most frustrating thing to try and look up and understand, just because there's so many ideas floating around, but I'm going to try and condense this for you as much as possible. I would say the key thing you need to keep in mind is keeping a specific routine and not switching between 2 different ways of learning to code. So for example, don't use 2 different tutorials at once teaching you how to code in Python, for example. This is because it eliminates confusion. A lot of people get confused when they see different terminology being used, different ways about going around the same thing, etc. That can be very confusing for a beginner. It's okay if you've already learned the fundamentals and just want to learn a different way to do it, but once you've already learned once you're beginning to learn the fundamentals, it's not so good. The second thing is just keeping it consistent. Everyone says this, but everyone says it for a reason. Make sure you do it like 20 minutes a day, just focusing on the fundamentals. It can be as little as 20 minutes up to even an hour or 2, just learning the solid fundamentals to give you a base to springboard your coding career or whatever you want to do to the next level. And that's going to be very helpful for you in anything you do, not just coding. So now that you've got 2 brief tips on how to get started with coding and why you want to code, how you're going to actually get good at coding. Now this is a difficult question to answer because it depends on the individual, but there are a few universal things. So to get good at coding, of course you have to invest your time in, but what do you do apart from investing your time? How do you actually get good at real life coding? Well, the main thing is getting involved in projects. Now these can be simple projects like going from how to make a calculator in Python to more complicated problems like linear regression models and machine learning models and everything in between. So all you need to do is look for projects based on your skill level, and you'll know the kind of projects for your skill level because you'd have already realized what you learned, and you can also attempt it. When you're doing this, you shouldn't treat it as a test, like you can't Google anything or go on Stack Overflow or GitHub or whatever, because it's not meant to be a test. Real life programmers do it all the time when they're developing things. It's just how it is. It's not a test when you're developing code. So just bear that in mind. You don't have to be so strict and harsh on yourself, and that's the best way to get good at coding. Just keep testing yourself and improving your skills and putting the time. It's that simple. There's nothing more you need to know. So after those 3 tips I've given, you may be thinking, are there any resources for me to learn to code? And yes, there's tons and tons of resources. Like off the top of my head, there's Code Academy, there's Centerdex on YouTube, there's Treehouse, there's Khan Academy even for computer science fundamentals. There's a lot of things to keep in mind, but I'll leave the best resources, in my opinion, in the description below. These will be videos, coding challenges, links to certain other resources like help with learning to code, and of course I've got coding videos that I've already done, and with more to come in the future, so you can check both of those. If you like that video, make sure you leave a like and subscribe. If you know anyone else wanting to learn to code, share this video with them. Check the links in the description below for coding tutorials, resources, my Instagram, GitHub, etc, etc. And until next time, bye.